selling is a series of unnatural acts, and people that are consistently great at it, even if they've got abundancy and they manage to detach from outcomes, they're not scared to put their head in the spokes and do the unnatural things. Consistent. That's what separates it. Like, you'll see it a lot in your world. I'm starting to come around to this. No matter how much coaching, training, enablement you lay on for a sales force, it's amazing that repetitively the same 20% of sellers are always in President's Club. It's got bugger all to do with territories. It's got bugger all to do with anything. They do the unnatural things better than the other people.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I am joined by Gerry Hill, who is a pipeline savant.
You did a straight face.
I did it with a straight face. So, as you can guess, we had a bit of a giggle about what shall I introduce you as? He said pipeline savant. I thought, oh yes, I am going to say that. But to a degree, you are, aren't you?
I spent the past 7 years on top of a lot of top of funnel and demand work and kind of seeing what's good, what's bad, what's awful. Good's probably about 5% of all of it, frankly. So learning the lessons from other people's failures is fascinating. So yeah, pipeline. I've got one great big conceit. I've sold stuff for like 8 figures and I've sold stuff for like 4 figures. And pipeline is the lifeblood of all good commercial operations. So when we enable, we go discovery to close, yet we overlook the life source of companies' abilities to thrive and survive and do all the things that they're supposed to do. Yeah, sort of dovetailing that obsession with quality, velocity, and really good enablement and execution. It's kind of where my major perspectives come from these days.
An interesting word there, obsession. Yeah, are you a bit obsessive about it?
Yeah, I'm one of those weirdos who lets work define my personality a little bit. So yeah, I do think about stuff when I shouldn't. I get these really abstract thoughts and yeah, kind of want to pursue it.
I just thought. So I don't know, you do put a lot of thought into this stuff. That's why I wanted to chat. I know around the whole pipeline piece, the go-to-market piece, sales in general, you know, we've passed across networking events and stuff. And I was just, someone was bugging me the other day. I thought, you know what, Gerry might have an opinion on this. And be careful what you wish for sometimes.
Yeah, right.
But where I was kind of going with this is that a lot of people talk about building go-to-market. Okay. And they will say stuff like customer focused and buyer-centric, and they'll say all this good stuff. But I look at it and I think, you know what? I don't really think you give a toss. And you're just actually trying to stick a load of people in the sausage machine. And those words are just because you have to say them. I don't know. Was I being grumpy? Am I grumpy? Is that true? I don't know. What do you reckon?
No, I think it's like anything, like it starts off with good intentions and intentions are pure. But actually, when it comes down to having to deal with the reality of doing a tough job and the requirement to transact and the requirement to hit a quarter, hit a month, hit a week, or whatever it is that you measure against, then, you know, unfortunately, unless you've got abundance of supply, it's always going to be tough to live up to such a high threshold. People are going to need to get the job done that they need to get job done 9 times out of 10, and it'll be scrappy and it'll be sloppy and it'll be self-interested, because if they don't, they might lose their job. So unless you can eliminate that kind of career fear and, you know, human nature, I think the sort of buyer-centricity piece is always going to be a bit corrupted at times, frankly.
Okay, so maybe I was being a bit grumpy, and it's not that they are saying that, but say I don't give a toss about the customers. I actually do, and I know it's the right thing. We'll get the results, but sometimes stuff's going to slip through cracks. We're going to mess up, and it ain't going to be as good as I might want it to be.
Yeah,
Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I genuinely believe is true. I think in B2B these days, with so many competitive threats, unless you're deeply obsessive about what your customer values you for, you can't win. but it's also almost impossible to stay on top of every single process and system and the sort of different little knobs you have to kind of tweak to make things execute perfectly. Unfortunately, it's an imperfect world, and what makes sales so interesting is it's like you've always got human characteristics involved, which are inherently unpredictable, right? So my objective always supersedes your objective. And I've been doing a little bit of advisory scoping for a friend's business recently. Tiny companies shouldn't be political, but they inherently are. People don't want to give information. They don't want to help. They don't want to support because they've got to get their head into their work, and that's how they're measured. And until you can figure out how to break those sort of flaws and failures of organizational design apart, then I don't think perfect buyer-centered selling will ever actually come into, crystallize its potential.
So we should still talk about it. We should still aspire to it. We should still have the right intentions, but we should also perhaps be a little bit realistic and go, maybe it's idealistic.
Here's how to think about it. Like, fervent Christians know that they're not perfect, but they still pursue a perfect Christian life. But they always fall short because the threshold is so high. But they've got faith. They believe. They're comprehensively wired into wanting to do good things for the right reasons. But every now and then, human nature trips them up. I think it's the same stuff if you're trying to reverse engineer into the perfect buyer-focused sales process. With good intentions, you believe deeply, you figured out something you can do for somebody that offers value to them. But every now and then, something's going to come along and collide with that set of values. And the urgency of it often overtakes the philosophy of it, right?
So we are on the right track then.
Yeah, definitely.
We're moving.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, buyers buy for their own reasons. Forcing people through a process that doesn't manufacture value for them is horrible. How do I mitigate for that? My answer is always going to be the same. If I just had a bit more stuff to talk to people about or more opportunities to thread through, then I'm probably going to be less urgent as a seller, and maybe I don't put them under as much pressure in the way that I might do if I didn't have a lot of stuff to talk about. People with healthy pipelines generally execute well unethically. People with unhealthy pipelines generally execute poorly and unethically.
Oh, now you've thrown something into Michael, haven't you? Because my connection with an interest in ethical selling. I think I had considered the pipeline piece, but you're making a very strong connection between those. Look, get back it right. Yeah.
It's the law of attraction, it's psychology. Like somebody who's got something, you're attracted to them. Somebody that doesn't have something, you're unattracted to, generally speaking. So if I don't need you like you need me, then I'm going to chase it. It's like, why does a 7 out of 10 female find herself massively attracted to a 9 out of 10 male? It's similar sort of things. Like it works in relationship psychology, it works in sort of alpha males. They have people flock to them because they've got something that other people don't have. So if I don't need you, I can execute things really well without the pressure of having to win. It's a remarkably freeing sensation. The bitter irony is you kind of win more. I know through my individual career, when I've had a lot, I've done really well. When I've not had a lot, I've not done very well because I've been chasing rather than attracting.
And it changes what you say and do, even unconsciously. I mean, that was some years ago. So do you think that was it deliberate? Or was it just, now I look back with 2020 vision, it's like, that's what was going on.
I probably didn't overthink it at the time. But, you go through these amazing phases and beautiful highs and crushing lows. Those beautiful highs is just characterized by a certain degree of effortlessness. Where you don't feel like you need to try particularly hard at something. It just all clicks, all comes along at the same time. And then you get into those moments in your life which feel a bit low and everything feels difficult. Everything feels a bit out of balance. You just got to grind away and you got to survive them, right? And the only way you can survive them is you have to do the things that need to be done. And sometimes the things that need to be done is like, stick your head in the spokes. It's uncomfortable, it's hard, but you never get yourself out of the situation unless you break that issue. And that's how you rebuild momentum to get back to that place of effortless. But sometimes you kind of need to write a bad deal. Sometimes you just need to, go and do the thing that you need to do in order to just break a pattern. And unfortunately, there are victims and consequences for those things. And in this instance, it might be that prospect, that customer.
In that you don't behave quite as you might want to, or
you might misprice and you might have to go back and reprice it, or you might, offer a month free that you shouldn't have done, or you might, shoe-arm somebody into a much longer commitment than they absolutely need. All of it's done with your own interest. But I don't think people do it to be a bad actor. I don't think anybody goes to work today going, I'm such a narcissist, I'm going to screw you. It's more a situation for 98% of humans, bar the 2% of humans that are absolute narcissists and psychopaths and don't care. But we just don't see as many of those humans anymore. So,
you'd like to think not.
it's unacceptable these days. I think management and leadership and culture has done such a sufficiently good job of pushing them away or not acknowledging their impacts, right? The outsized invisible asshole that dominates your business. You just don't see them as much as you used to.
Which is a good thing.
Let's talk. Sometimes you need them, though. There are moments when you still need the rainmaker who's a bit of a dick that nobody likes, right?
Yeah. That's a tough management piece, isn't it? You got the guy, they're not quite sure exactly what they're doing. You've got a hunch that it might not be fully correct, but they are doing the numbers, and so I will do the right thing. Just not yet.
Your customers don't necessarily like them. They thrive in sort of market-dominant categories where you might be the only show in little town. They've done a good job of picking a place to be, and they can just use that as leverage. Yeah, there's all sorts of dynamics.
Yeah.
But the one thing I think people are starting to recognize, even in coming from software, in an over playbooked industry, I think the one thing that I am believing to be true is that people recognize the buyers buy for their reasons and not for your reasons. And that you have to rebuild your system around that, right?
What do you mean over playbooks industry? I think I know, but I like your perspective on that.
Well, I'll pick on the medic mafia.
Oh,
right. It's a phenomenal concept, and anything that starts at a point of origin is generally very good, very well designed for very specific reasons. And then the acolytes pick it up, and the acolytes do a good job of distributing it. And then their acolytes pick it up, and it gets a little bit more diluted. And then their acolytes pick it up, and it gets a little bit diluted, to the point that it essentially has then become a standardized core, and you can't get a job unless you've got some degree of exposure to it, regardless of how talented you are, how good you are, what other sort of adjacent systems you may or may not have been schooled in. But actually, when you go and interrogate it, I did a SKO for a private equity-backed company, and they're interested in medic, and everyone's hands up, go up. I know medic. Do you? What's an M1? What's an M2? 150 people in the room's hands went down, 2 stayed up. Right? So if you're going to obstinate on a playbook, then everybody needs to know the playbook. My point is, it's just like dilution from point of origin. For PTC at that moment in time, in complex data, whatever it was that they sold, it was phenomenal. But fair play to them, right? John McMahon's made a fortune off it. Hill Ventures has made a fortune off it. It's indoctrinated an entire generation of people in much the same way Spin did for my dad's generation at Xerox. And you need frameworks for people to be able to execute, but it often becomes such a big crutch that actually getting in between the cracks of the letters means that you can't have natural and organic conversations with people and actually find out what motivates. You've got to populate this qualification sheet for your own instead. It's kind of paradoxical, isn't it? No buyers buy for their own reasons. We're going to try and help qualify what those reasons are, but at the same time, we're going to put them under the spotlight with interrogation. and not enable people to have a conversational approach to that strategy or that framework. It's just paradoxical. It feels hypocritical at times. And I think it comes back to the question that you were asking at the top of our conversation, which is, do people just talk about buyer-centered stuff, or do they, say it for the right reasons and believe it? And medic's a good example of something that can be completely corrupted within a system, right?
Yeah. I think sometimes it's, I don't want to be a medic bashing session, but it can also be, I've got a hammer and so everything's now a nail. I had someone who was, I was talking to somebody and they asked me to do some work. So we had this trainer and they were trying to teach us this thing, but it just doesn't work for us. It's just, it wasn't quite this. I'm not going to say exactly what it was, but it could have been people who are going around doing 10 visits to pubs a day. And they were trying to teach them how to do it using medic, because medics are really good. I thought, well, it's not for that world. It's just not going to work. But they couldn't say it. She's like so blinkered on that.
Yeah, if somebody that commissions one utility grade power generator a year, and there's 3 people in the market, it's much deeper than that. It's not cellular, right? So, we're asking people to transact on, potentially £500 million versus 55 grand for a pilot for some software. Not everything's the same.
Yeah, I'll be doing some work with people selling wind farms. Yeah, I'm not sure they'd be that bothered with medics. It's fairly confident.
I got to have this weird Venn diagram of technical, real estate, deal structuring, supply chain, understand what kilowatt hour pricing to manufacturing lead times. You can't medic on that.
Who's your champion? It's the Ministry of. It's the king. Who's that? One of them was the king, isn't it? Yeah, anyway, you said this thing about these crushing lows. I'd love to talk about beautiful highs, but we know if it bleeds, it leads, and we'll go for something that is going to be more, more useful, perhaps. Where you sort of said you just need to do some things need to be done. It's uncomfortable. If somebody's sat listening to this and going, I think I might be, if not an all-time crushing low, I am in a bit of a dip here. Those things that need to be done, what sort of things are they? Can you sort of give us a little bit of a, I don't know, what survival package? Is it?
It's as simple as I need to requalify my forecast. So in order to do that, I need to actually pick up the phone to somebody, but I feel uncomfortable about doing that. Or I need to pick up the phone to their boss, but my relationship lives with Fred, not with Fred's boss. But Fred's boss is the person that I've been supposedly getting told that is making the decision through my other guy, but no decision's coming. Like, do I really care about the other guy sufficiently? No, I don't. I have to go and do the right thing for my book of business and for my business that funds my employment, which is being uncomfortable, which is unnatural, which is to go around their back and above them. That's a really good example of something where a lot of modern sellers really struggle. It's an uncomfortable act. Feels like you're telling tales. Hardly anyone's got the conversational skills anymore to actually kind of structure that conversation so that your main guy doesn't feel bad and your other guy doesn't feel surprised. So people don't want to do it because it's uncomfortable. But I have to do it if I'm going to get my job done sufficiently well. That's something really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and perhaps a bit counterintuitive in that I ain't got enough deals, and the deal I've got, I'm going to do the thing which might blow it away.
But it's the prep for that. It's the psychological. Got to do it. Like, I've got a 5-year-old. He's an honest kid, but he's a 5-year-old. He's gonna immediately tell porkies around certain situations, and you need to challenge him on it. Unfortunately, a lot of people's relationships with their buying organizations are exactly like that. Sometimes I need to go and talk to Isaac directly and get a straight answer. But if he doesn't give me a straight answer, I need to go to my wife and say, did Isaac say the thing that, he may or may not be bluffing? Not comfortable. I don't want to undermine my son and steal his valor and his self-esteem. But at the same time, he kind of needs to be taught a lesson.
Yeah.
And it's all psychology, isn't it?
Huge amount. Understanding how people think. We just ask ChatGPT anyway, and that'll tell you how people think. Oh, bit facetious, but actually, it might give you better ideas than the one you've got at the moment.
It's one of the best lessons that Sandra ever sort of made clear to people, is that selling is a series of unnatural acts, and people that are consistently great at it, even if they've got abundancy and they manage to detach from outcomes, they're not scared to put their head in the spokes and do the unnatural things. Consistent. That's what separates it. Like, you'll see it a lot in your world. I'm starting to come around to this. No matter how much coaching, training, enablement you lay on for a sales force, it's amazing that repetitively the same 20% of sellers are always in President's Club. It's got bugger all to do with territories. It's got bugger all to do with anything. They do the unnatural things better than the other people. I generally believe that now.
Because they get it.
Skill and will.
They get that this is something that they need to do this, and the other things that they might imagine, they've figured, no, it's not that. This is stuff that really makes a difference. Yeah. The other thing you just mentioned there is conversational skills, and I don't want to let that one pass either. There's these little things you're just like, not quite, you're not throwing them away, but it's like, whoa, hang on a minute. Conversational skills, I can't remember the actual words. I just wrote that down and put a box around it. I think it said aren't as good as they used to be, or aren't up to it, or something. Can you remember exact words?
No, but I think if
it wasn't very complimentary about people's conversational skills. We put it that way, and I just
people just don't know how to engage in them in quite the same way. It's not true. Yeah, like we live in a world of probably about 80% of our communications asynchronous and text or short order, short form. I'd imagine that people hate getting emails from me because they're kind of like one word. I don't do like fluffy stuff. So the only way you're actually ever going to get anything meaningful from me is to have a conversation with me and vice versa. But I don't see people just coming and tapping me on the shoulder going, hey, we're starting or initiating everything. Well, like I said, I've been doing this sort of state of the work. So I've been doing quite a lot of discovery across multiple sites post M&A for a company recently. And I spent an entire day sat at a bench with like a delivery team who've got a client services revenue line attached to their business. Hardly any of them were curious about why I was there.
But he answered stuff.
Yeah, big, fat, like bald dude, like just there. Only one.
Might have been scared, Gerry.
Maybe, but only one or two of them actually came and sort of initiated a conversation, asked how I was, asked what I was up to, offered me a cup of tea, you know, any of the stuff that would normally be sort of standard protocols when I started my career. And I always remember my dad would tell it to me when I started like in the recruitment company in 2001, go and make sure one of the first things that you do is offer to make everybody a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and you get up to go. Just a little basic like that starts initiates conversations, builds rapport, shows you trustworthy, shows you thinking about them, serve yourself. And I think conversations the same, like initiate conversations with people that show that you're trustworthy, that you've got their best interests at heart, that you're trying to extract information for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. I don't know how many people fluently do it across hundreds of potential interactions a day in their daily life.
Interesting you talk about
when a kid's getting their temper.
Daily life. Yeah. I mean, immediately I was thinking of salespeople, a lot of them still just want to talk about their stuff. Still. I mean, how much money is spent researching and understanding sales? How much is spent on sales training, coaching, all that sort of stuff? Yeah, people are still going, let me tell you all about me or my company and this.
At some point,
a world and dots and things. And
yeah, I mean, at some point it makes a difference. You do have to at some point, like, but it's a series of reveals, isn't it? Like, you know, and I think that's what's lost on a lot of people. Or unless you're doing something so revolutionary and innovative that people don't really understand the nature of the problem yet, but they've seen something that has made you curious, inducing enough to have a conversation. You need to do a little explaining in those types of category creating conversations. But if you're just like middleware in an industry incumbent that's been around for 25 years, the real skill is trust building. It's not education, right? Because you're an assumed number. Your competitor.
My things are cutting edge and innovative. It says so on the website. Marketing told me you have to be explained to you because you won't get it. God, I'm a facetious mode today, aren't I? As ever.
But it's realistic. No, it is realistic because, we're pushing people into these quite hard careers, but nobody's hardening people in the hard careers to make them more resilient to it. And, you could build really phenomenal relationships with people by proving that you're honest and that you've got doubts about things. And I just think in the world of sort of fast software, and I don't know, but people will just like facilitate. They don't prescribe, they don't challenge, they don't know how to do it with the right level of diplomacy, but still get what they need. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's missing. And that comes from having dynamic conversations with people that are around you every single day of your life. I see a distinct difference with the way, like, I'm not claiming to be a great parent, but there are a couple of conscious choices that me and my wife have made. Like, we don't allow social media in the house in any way, shape, or form. We don't allow phones after 4 p.m. like that are visible. TV's a special treat. It's 2 hours on a Saturday morning. Little things like that. We force Isaac to go and do things in public that he might not want to do. Like if we go to the local coffee shop up in the village green, he's got to go and clear his plates. He's got to go and take them back to the counter. If he wants to get an apple juice, not a hot chocolate, he has to walk to the back but he has to go through a whole bunch of people to get there. Right? That means that he has to have these little micro conversations. Sorry, excuse me, he's 4.5. He doesn't want to do that. He's shy, but he has to do it if he wants to get what he wants. Right? Versus like helicoptering, which is bold of it, I'm going to steal your self-esteem. And I think one of my major fears for like Gen Z workforce is they've been exposed to parenting that has comprehensively stolen their self-esteem and told them that they're always right. And that doesn't help B2B sellers in any way, shape or form. And this isn't supposed to be a societal thing, I'm afraid. It's genuinely our belief, because I see so much. The people that consistently outstripped in terms of performance are your mature reps, and the ones that consistently underperform and job change are your immature reps. What's the common thread? It's not a business experience, it's resilience.
I mean, we go into a slightly different thing, and maybe it's a whole different podcast, maybe it's a whole different thing altogether. But if we're saying, right, okay, yeah, agree with that, what can we do to build resilience? Has the ship sailed? Is there something
I think society's going to do a bit in the next few years to make sure people either thrive or survive or don't. I think there's something coming, not in a weird conspiratorial way, but there will be a massive reordering of economies, I'd imagine, and people will be impacted by that. I think people's sort of tolerance for politeness and failure to get the job done and over-indexing culture as a term for letting people not do things is going to go away. I've seen that all the time. Like one of the things that I look for is accountability to manage. Are you willing to manage? Are you willing to tell people what to do when it needs to happen? That's a dying skill. And I think people are going to recognize at a certain point they're not getting their life outcomes fulfilled. And that's going to be a great wake-up call, but maybe just a bit too late. The converse of that, though, is I've been trying to think through sort of incentive, reward, and recognition recently. And for people like me, born like late 70s, early 80s, we're the kind of dying of the crowd that really cares about money as a primary driver, because we know that money could still buy us stuff that we care about. Like I felt bad for like a 23-year-old on a standard comp plan as an SDR in a fast growth business right now, because even though you might be able to make 90 grand, what's that actually going to get in real economic terms? Not a lot. Might get in some cool holidays with his mates, or if he's savvy, he might put some stuff into a SIP or a ISA. But the thought that he can quickly accelerate to his first property, like I was able to, like I got a huge draw on a commission from one big deal. Well, he's never going to get the big deal because he works in software and software pricing is commoditized. So, if I'm him, I'm thinking, well, I might as well put my money into experiences because I can't afford to build the same like my mum and dad. So I think that we're seeing a massive sort of conscientiousness change happening in the workforce as well, because people don't understand that their outsized inputs can have outsized rewards. And companies aren't floating anymore. Everything's private market. Nothing's going public. So equity promises are pretty much meaningless unless you can sell on secondaries. Guess what? In the UK, we can't sell on secondaries. There isn't a secondary market to sell your stock on. So you're kind of trapped in a comp bubble that promises a lot, fails to deliver. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to really be disheartened about this stuff. In our day, because in our day it was a different economy, a different macros, different culture, incentives, different examples.
And it's probably unfair for a lot of the comparisons that we make. But if you were starting out now and sort of trying to take ownership of your career, and maybe that's the answer in the question itself, but yeah, to take ownership of your career, what sort of things would you put in place?
I think it's taken me nearly 20 years of working to actually start to figure out how money works. Find somebody who's deeply literate on how to make money work, from taxables to SIPs to, offshore, whatever it is, crypto, it doesn't matter. I want to understand how money works so that I know that money can work for me. Before I got caught in the classic early sellers trap of eat what you kill, spend it, eat what you kill, just keep repeating that cycle over and over and over again. It's only now that I get to the point where I recognize the value of money more than I ever. I wish I'd had that as an ingrained part of my job to be done at 23 years old when I stopped playing rugby. Right? But then I think about the culture of the sales floor at the time. They would put on tailors, they would do anything to keep you spending, right? That's how companies used to be. We will do things to keep you spending. So you might make 200 grand this year, but guess what? You're going to spend 200, and that's going to keep you tied to your desk because our billables are going to go through the roof. There wasn't a single staffing, trading, financial services, B2B, anything in London in the early 2000s that didn't have that culture wired into their employment.
It's akin to the mill owner, isn't it? Paying people on the Friday and saying, hopefully you'll spend all your money on beer. Then you have to work in America on Monday.
Yeah, they used to have like coal mine currency. They were paying US dollars. And you'd have to sort of spend it all in the village, in the coal mine store, and all your rent came out and down. Like, it still exists. You don't see it as much, but that was kind of how it was. I think now, yeah, if I had some financial literacy, that would have been phenomenal. Be a bit more intentional, I think. But, the problem is you start your career in your 20s, not your 30s, so you don't actually know what you want and what interests you. I think, again, go where you can learn the most in the shortest amount of time, not necessarily what's going to pay you the most in the shortest amount of time. And then thirdly, given what I know about strategy now, try and find places with massive addressable markets or desperately small markets, but nowhere in between.
Massive or tight.
Yeah. I've got one really good mate, Mark Fouché. He's joined a vendor who can only sell his product to 1 or 10 companies. That's it. And if they miss the boat with 1/10 of the market every year, they run a business, right? So the stakes change. You have to become exceptional at that one thing, and that's a superpower. Or the other side of it is you go to a big company with such a big addressable market, it doesn't really matter what other competitive forces are in play or any of the other bits. All you can control is the quality of your process and execution. and take advantage of just how big the market is, knowing that you're not going to lose starting. But when you're caught between those two states, you're worried about all the market forces and the competitive pressure coming at you from that side. And then you're like, well, at what point do we sort of cap out here? And then you get put in these interesting strategy cycles of new product acquisition. It's like, those are painful places to be. Right?
Yeah. Like it. That stuff about understanding money in the financial piece. Well, I was smiling when you were saying that. Again, very similar. And then the people probably listening, going like two fat ball blokes talking about that. Honestly, it would have made such a difference if I'd have learned this. I probably wouldn't even do what I'm doing. I don't know, or I'd be doing it in a different way.
I only came across the concept of compounding about 8 years ago.
Freedom being able to use money to buy time is again a concept I've come across, and then kind of how you can manage it.
Or print money whilst you sleep, that kind of stuff. How do you find those opportunities? Really rare.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've had a guy who's very, very good at this stuff on the podcast a couple of times, a guy called Jason Greystone. So I might put a link to at least one of the things he's done.
And I think that's probably one of the best benefit offers that you could potentially put into a plan around incentives these days is some sort of financial literacy element. What you do.
Right.
I genuinely believe that, right?
We'll give you some money and we'll train you in how to use it properly.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I would have loved to learn that. It makes me think, what did I learn on 4 years doing a commerce degree?
I did economics. I didn't learn a thing on money.
Well, with economics as well, part of a commerce degree, along with a whole lot of other stuff, not sales. Anyway, that's a completely different subject. Oh, mate, we could carry on about this and kind of go deep, I suspect. But you've given us a lovely food for thought, actually. A couple of things I wasn't expecting us to talk about, but it was really cool to touch on. If somebody has heard this and think, you know what, that is an interesting opinion, or it's something I would like to kick around a little bit with Gerry, where is the best place to get in contact with you?
Yeah, phone number's 07702 034 081. So if anybody listened long enough to hear that, I do pick up the phone. It's the thing that I do. And then just LinkedIn. Gerry Hill. Can't miss me. Although I often get confused for Gerry Hill car sales in Aberdare and South Wales. If I listen to everybody's pitches, and weirdly I know that Gerry Hill car sales in Aberdare might be in the market for post-services technologies. So there you go.
Love it, mate. Thank you for spending some time with us, and take care. We'll speak again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks for it.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.